Hi everybody and welcome back to another Legends of Runeterra video. I don't know how to say this, but I'm really surprised. And if you guys haven't seen this, I'm sure you guys will be as well. Yeah, Riot pulling out some tricks. I have no idea what's going on here. Predict had all the looks of being pre-Zilean. A Zilean sort of package, and anyway, here we go. Taliyah. Taliyah sails the sands. So this is very surprising to me. I did not expect to see Taliyah here. I expected something else, so I have no idea what they're doing. And yeah, let's go ahead and look at Taliyah. I haven't looked at her at all. I've got no idea.
The way, and I'll make the way. Come on.
All right, 5 costs, 2/4. Wow. Taliyah, play, summon an exact copy of an allied landmark. Level up, you summoned 5+ landmarks. A landmark synergy champion, very interesting. So in League of Legends, Taliyah is a champion that like, she's basically an earthbender. She morphs the earth and uses it to, she can like sail around on rocks and stuff like that. So anyway, so that's kind of the landmark synergy here, which is interesting. A 5 cost, that's a 2/4. That seems extremely understated. Summon an exact copy of an allied landmark. Okay, so I don't know. Let's go ahead and look at this. I don't know if it's just one that's in your hand, if it's one that's in your deck, if it's one that has to be on the board. Let's go ahead and look.
There's so much to see. They're so sweet.
All right, so she summoned. I think it has to be on the board, and this looks like a new landmark here.
Sleeping. Hope you get pebbles in your shoe.
Alright, we're not sure what that does. It will probably reveal that in a second. New keyword predict. And here's the card art that I was looking at when I was predicting that Taliyah was going to be part of the... she would be the champion expansion for Shurima, because this was the card that was associated with that. Say or Sai Scout, I'm not really sure. Play, predict. So another predict card here. If you pick a landmark, grant me elusive. Alright, so if you got landmarks in your deck and you predict, so remember, predict is pulling 3 random cards from your deck, and then you can pick one of them to be on the top of your deck. So if you pick a landmark, you grant this unit elusive. This is a 3 cost, 2/4, so a fairly decent stat line for health, not for attack, which is interesting because elusive, generally you would rather have a higher attack stat than you would a defense stat. So I don't really think this is very good. I think a 3/3 would be a little bit better, if I'm being honest, with the elusive stat. Unless, I mean, this could be used as a tech card for blocking elusives, but where she's only dealing 2 damage as an elusive unit, I don't think that's doing enough for 3 mana. And on top of that, you have to fulfill a condition in order to get that. So I don't really feel like this is that good of a card, if I'm being honest, and mostly because elusive is used as a more aggressive style of play rather than defensive. And having more health does not help us deal a lot of damage, but maybe she synergizes with some other cards.
Taliyah, do you miss your family? I miss some of them. The others are right here.
Alright, so she's predicting. So here's some new cards as well that she predicted out of the deck. So Sharpened Resolve, a burst speed, a 1 cost spell. Give an ally +1/+1 this round. If you've summoned a landmark this game, give it +3/+1 instead. That's actually a pretty strong spell. Give an ally +1/+1 this round. If you summoned a landmark this game, give it +3/+1 instead. So this becomes more powerful the later the game goes on, right? But we saw some landmarks that were extremely cheap. We've also seen landmarks that, well, the Buried Sun Disc specifically, that is pulled out of your hand turn 1, which would activate Sharpened Resolve immediately. And that is a 3/1, like, it's a huge attack buff, which explains why that last card was a 2/4 instead. of a higher statted, so we grant that one elusive, we give it +3/+1, it's now all of a sudden a 5/4 or a 5/5. And this isn't a permanent buff, but anything dealing 5 damage is pretty strong for 1 mana as well. So I think Sharpened Resolve is pretty good, especially in this deck where we're going to be able to or in this sort of place, as Shurima specifically, there seems to be a lot more landmarks in other regions. And here we get another one as well. Hibernating Rock Bear, a landmark. Countdown 3, summon a Grumpy Rock Bear. This is kind of funny because we just barely mentioned earthbending for this reminds me of the avatars. Like, what kind of bear is it? It's like just a bear. Anyway, a rock bear, a grumpy rock bear. And we'll have to wait to see what we saw it kind of summoned down here. So 5/4 it looks like, probably just no keywords, but I'm not for sure. All right, stone weaving. Okay, so it's not earthbending, it's stone weaving. I apologize. So a 1-cost burst speed spell. Look at 3 random landmarks you can afford. Pick 1 to create in hand. Create. So we're just creating another one. Look at 3 random landmarks you can afford. I'm not really sure like how this works. Is this going to be from the pool of all landmarks? Is it from your regions? It doesn't say it's from your regions, so it looks like it could be from all regions. This is an epic card as well. You just have to be able to play it right, so it becomes more powerful as the game goes on. This is actually a fairly well balanced card, I would say, just because you can't play, you know, a really expensive landmark before, you know, the turn that you can play it. So it's very, I think, balanced throughout the entire game. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it seems like an interesting card. If it's pulling from all regions, that would be very interesting as well. Well, I'll just let this go. We'll see these cards in a second. Roiling Sands. Landmark. When an enemy is summoned, destroy me to grant it vulnerable. Well, interesting. It's like a trap card. It's like activated upon entry of another unit. That's very interesting. This like puts a whole other layer of mind games and stuff, because you're putting out this card, they know what it's going to do, and it's, you know, it affects what they play next, which is really interesting. So this, when you are playing against it, will affect what you do, and it will definitely affect your opponent when you play it. Yeah, this is super interesting. A 2-cost grant vulnerable though. When an enemy is summoned, destroy me to grant it vulnerable. So, I mean, this is kind of like any other vulnerable, just for 2 mana. Which is probably, I mean, it synergizes with Renekton, it synergizes with the Jarvan package that we have. Is granting the next enemy summoned vulnerable. Very interesting. I really don't know what to think about this card. It's probably a little expensive, just because we have other 2-cost cards that do the same thing, but like give us a body or give us extra stats. This one is just like a landmark that we put out for 2 mana that grants a vulnerable to the next enemy, so the enemy gets to decide what that is. So I think this is a little bit understated compared to some other cards that grant vulnerable, but understated, just weak, I guess, not understated. It's interesting for sure, though. Alright, so you play 5 landmarks. Alright, Taliyah turns into a 3/5, still very understated for a 5-drop. Summon an exact copy of an allied landmark. So that's still her play effect. Attack. Deal 2 to my blocker. If it's dead or gone, deal 2 to the enemy nexus instead. If you have a landmark, do this 2 more times. So that's a total of 6 damage, right? So you deal 2 to my blocker. If it's dead or gone, deal 2 to the enemy. Nexus instead. If you have a landmark, do this 2 more times. I don't think this stacks with multiple landmarks. I think that'd be way too overpowered, but I understand why her stat line is kind of how it is. It's very similar to Ezreal, where we are dealing damage to the enemy Nexus through like alternative means, where, you know, Ezreal's playing spells and is damaging the Nexus, and now all you need is landmarks, and it basically will clear out your opponent in front of you, so you're dealing 6 damage to the opponent. And then if they don't block with a big blocker, then you just deal it directly to the Nexus. It's interesting because this is only on your attack. So automatically she kind of synergizes with Jarvan as well, and with Demacia and rallies, which is interesting. 5 cost, like... Well, I'll have to go back and look at her, but I can't remember if it was... You just need to play 5 landmarks, or if she needs to see them played. Probably just play, because she's a 5 cost, but we'll see. It's interesting for sure.
Like threading a needle.
Oh, alright. Ancient Hourglass. A fast spell. 2 cost fast spell. Obliterate an ally and summon a stasis statue in its place. Wow. Alright, let's see what a stasis statue is, because I imagine it's still going to have stats.
All rocks erode eventually.
Sometimes your closest allies, I would say, so it turns them into a landmark. What just happened there? I'm not sure what happened.
Like threading a needle.
Obliterate an ally and summon a stasis statue in its place.
All rocks erode eventually.
So I'm guessing this kind of holds its place, and he gets a second Taliyah, or has a second one in the hand.
Stand back.
We're gonna have to see what stasis statue does. It protects the unit somehow as a landmark, and then resummons it. Very interesting for sure. I'm still surprised that we didn't get Zilean here. Let's go ahead and look at Mobalytics. Alright. Taliyah. Summon an exact copy of an allied landmark. Okay, so this is all the same here. Stone weaving, look at 3 random landmarks. We didn't really see this in action. I assume it's from all of the regions though. Like, it doesn't say, you know, from your hand, from your region, from your deck. It says look at 3 random landmarks you can afford. So that seems like all of them. Are there better landmarks than others? Oh yeah, for sure. Especially when you're building a deck specifically around Taliyah. Alright. Shapestone, we saw that. Okay, here's the Grumpy Rock Bear that it turned into. So yeah, just kind of a vanilla stat line here. So it's a 5/4. You have to wait. So this seems like a pretty fair card here. If we have ways to speed up countdown, then this would be a little bit overpowered, I think. We haven't seen that yet, but it's pretty strong. So we're putting this down at earliest, right, on turn 2. And the countdown's 3, so by the time we can play this, it has the stats of a 5 drop, right? So this is why it's a 5 cost unit. So pretty strong here. Alright, Desert Naturalist. Play, destroy a landmark. If it's allied, summon a Grumpy Rock Bear. A 4 drop. Alright, destroy a landmark. If it's allied, summon a Grumpy Rock Bear. So this looks like you can destroy your own and summon a Grumpy Rock Bear, or you can destroy an enemy landmark, which is interesting. So this is kind of a tech card, another tech card that has multiple uses, right? So you can use it if the meta is very landmark dependent, or you can just use it if you're using landmarks, which is super cool. It's very versatile, right? So we can use it as a tech card to get rid of landmarks that our opponent has, or we can use it to summon Grumpy Rock Bears with cheaper landmarks that we're going to be including into our deck. All right, Salt Spire, that's kind of hard to read. Another landmark, a 4 drop. Countdown 2, summon the Grumpy Rock Bear. Then, if you've summoned 4+ landmarks this game, grant the strongest ally +2/+2. So another very landmark synergistic sort of card here. Summon a Grumpy Rock Bear, then if you've summoned 4+ landmarks, grant the strongest ally +2/+2. So countdown 2. So if you play this turn 4, the earliest that you're going to be able to get this countdown off is turn 6. And then at that point, if you have summoned 4+ landmarks, you grant +2/+2. So very earliest, if you have played a landmark basically every other round, then you'll have a Grumpy Rock Bear that's going to be a 7/6 on board. So that's probably a little bit too slow. We don't have any way, well, and the Grumpy Rock Bear isn't like a elusive or overwhelm unit either. It's just a big body. So turn 6 we could have a 7/6 unit, which I don't think is super strong. I don't know that this is, you're going to have to include these landmarks into Shurima and Taliyah decks in general in order to get her to level up. Oh, by the way, I forgot to look at her level up. You've summoned 5+ landmarks, so yeah, she doesn't need to be on board to level up, which makes her a lot stronger. A lot stronger. If she had to see them, that'd be ridiculously hard, and she's so understated that it would be almost impossible to level her up before she died. Alright. So, interesting. Yeah, to level her up, you're going to have to include a lot of these landmarks. Rock Hopper. When I'm summoned, summon a Roiling Sands, and Roiling Sands was a landmark that granted vulnerable. I like this better. So it doesn't. Oh, this is not a main deckable card. So see, we do not have a gem here. So that actually makes that so much better. I was gonna say if this was a 2-drop, I would not have been that good. But this looks like a token card with this Rock Hopper, maybe with something else and maybe another spell. Oh yeah, duh, right here. Summon 2 Roiling Sands, draw 1. So, yeah, this makes this just a lot better all of a sudden. A lot easier to level up Taliyah as well, especially since this is a burst speed spell, which means we can get a burst speed level up for Taliyah. Keep that in mind. Summon 2 Roiling Sands and draw 1. So in a Taliyah deck, I think this is very strong. So this is effectively granting 2 enemies vulnerable and you're drawing 1 at the same time for 3-cost burst speed spell. I think that is a pretty strong card in a Taliyah deck. Maybe in nothing else. Well, Renekton, I guess, could work as well. Drawing cards is always good too. And this Rock Hopper is a 3/1. When I'm summoned, summon a Roiling Sands. So only a summon ability. We don't have to meet any conditions. We get the Roiling Sands. So effectively, this is just the 2 costs from Bilgewater, where we're granting the strongest enemy vulnerable. So just a little bit more synergy with Shurima. Okay, Ancient Hourglass we saw. Let's look at Stasis Statue. Very interesting. Also a token card, so this is not main deckable as far as I know. Stasis Statue, a 2-cost landmark. Countdown 1. Summon an exact copy of the obliterated unit I replaced. So this is actually pretty strong here. Because it's only got to wait 1 turn. So the enemy, you can play this at the end of the turn or round for whatever reason. I mean, they use this in the video as a protection for Taliyah so that you can get more of them out. But a countdown of 1 isn't like a huge condition here, right? And she ended up using it as a blocker as well and protecting her unit at the same time, which is pretty cool. So yeah, they're going to have to deal with this at that turn. Otherwise, you're just going to get the unit back the next round, which seems pretty fair. This counts probably as summoning a landmark as well, so helping up to level up Taliyah again. So very interesting card. We're summon an exact copy of the obliterated unit I replaced. So all the buffs should remain that you've put on that unit too. All right, a 0-cost fast speed spell, also a token card. More token cards here. Threaded Volley. This is a skill. All right, so that's just the skill that Taliyah has. So this doesn't really count as a card. I wish they wouldn't count this as cards. Deal 2 to Taliyah's blocker if it's dead or gone. Deal 2 to the enemy nexus instead. And Teen Spirit. Wonder if this will have the song attached with it. Destroy a landmark. If it's allied, summon a Grumpy Rock Bear. Whose token spell was this? Destroy a landmark. If it's allied, summon a Grumpy Rock Bear. Alright, that was the Desert Naturalist. Interesting for sure here. We got a couple more landmarks. A couple more landmarks here that we are going to be able to use to level up our units. It's the first time we've seen token landmarks as well, unless I'm forgetting one, but token landmarks, very interesting. Summonable landmarks as well from units, which we haven't seen before. And we're getting a little bit more insight on promising future here. Grant an allied landmark. My countdown completion effect activates twice. So yeah, we can kind of understand why it's a 4 cost now because of Stasis Statue. I think this should replace the obliterated ally more than once. We saw that kind of in the video with Taliyah here. I'm not sure what spell they used at the end though, if I'm being honest. Oh, he just used Taliyah. So Taliyah copied herself. Summoned an exact copy of an allied landmark. So very interesting. So kind of similar here with promising future. So we could use that and get a whole bunch of Taliyahs out. How does that synergize? So I mean, that works very similarly to Anivia. That may be too combo dependent to get Anivia actually out. I mean, and I don't think this is going to be any more effective than just including Anivia and Shadow Isles, but it's potentially a second Anivia deck that we could use. What else could we use with this? I think Targon's Peak would be okay. Not particularly efficient, I think, especially if you're copying it, you know, after turn 5 and filling up your board with landmarks that aren't going to go away. Taliyah does seem like it would work best in these Shurima decks where the landmarks actually produce units. So we've got Clockling and we've got the Grumpy Rock Bear that are coming from these landmarks. So if we fill up our board with landmarks, we're at least getting units out of them in the future, whereas the other regions don't really have that. What else? What else could Taliyah potentially fit with? We've said there's a lot of vulnerable synergy still, so Renekton and Jarvan do seem like interesting champions that we could see with her. Undying, I guess, just because of the vulnerable package. The elusive unit here seems very out of place, if I'm being honest. It's like, we get some predict. If you pick a landmark, grant me elusive. Like, it seems a little bit out of place, because we get a predictability with her, and she synergizes with landmarks, but is elusive, doesn't have like a huge attack stat. A little bit confusing, to be honest. I don't know that she actually fits with Taliyah. Maybe, yeah, I really don't know. Her stat line just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for somebody who's trying to be elusive. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are other things. If you guys have ideas, go ahead and I'll ask the question in the comment section again. If you guys have any ideas of how to use these cards. I mean, summoning multiple champions with Taliyah and with the Stasis Statue would be very interesting. It is fairly combo dependent, so I don't know how often you're going to be able to get that off, but it is a very interesting card. Very interesting card. And we can use it as, you know, as like they did in the video, to block attacks and stuff, and then get the champion back and resummon it, and very interesting. So we'll see how this all fits. Taliyah seems like a pretty cool champion, kind of an alternate win condition champion. Like I said, very similar to Ezreal. The vibes are very similar. Ezreal's a 3-drop with a 1/3 stat line. Taliyah's a 5-drop with a 2/4 stat line. Both of them level up well without having to be on the board, and both of them deal damage to the enemy nexus. I think Ezreal is probably still a little bit stronger. Taliyah has more combo package potential here with her spells and followers, so I think it may be harder for Taliyah. You're going to have to build a deck very specifically for her, I think, to get her to shine. I don't think there's going to be a lot of variability in Taliyah decks if you want Taliyah to actually level up. Now, her package, on the other hand, may have other uses that we don't know yet, but Taliyah herself, since she's kind of tied to the landmarks, and at the moment Shurima is the only region with summonable landmarks. you're almost going to have to include these cards if you want to level her up efficiently every time. So that's my official opinion. She seems okay. I definitely am going to have to play her to see how good she actually is. And yeah, once again, if you guys have any ideas of how Taliyah would actually work with other champions, go ahead and send them over. I'll pose the question down in the comments at the bottom of the video. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and we will see you tomorrow. Thanks.